I'm Grant Oster. While pursuing my MC degree in chemistry in graduate school, I crossed paths with Laura. I fell in love instantly. It took her about 6 months, just before earning her MA in art history, to reciprocate, but it happened. Although neither of us was particularly experienced, as far as I was concerned, our bed life was excellent, and she never voiced any complaints. We married less than a year after her MA graduation, securing jobs in the same city. She taught at a community college, while I taught part-time at a state university and worked part-time with a science consulting firm. After 3 years of marriage, I left the university and worked full-time as a consultant, specializing in explosives. One of my clients was the federal government, and during the birth of our first daughter, Angela, my government work involved extensive travel. I understand it was tough on Laura, but I did propose quitting for a full-time teaching job at a local college which had tried to recruit me multiple times. However, Laura appreciated my job's financial benefits and the lifestyle it afforded us, encouraging me to persist. Her smiling mantra was, "I can survive, I'm self-sufficient." Even with the birth of our second daughter, Grace, 2 years after Angela, my travel persisted. I again suggested a career change, but Laura insisted I stick with consulting, considering the additional responsibilities of raising 2 children. When our daughters turned 5 and 7, my schedule eased, leading Laura to return to work. She secured an administrative position at the local university, primarily affiliated with the liberal arts college. For reasons I never fully understood but didn't bother me as it brought her joy, Laura developed a keen interest in photography. We now have over a dozen albums chronicling our lives with the kids. Update. During that time, Laura developed an unexpected interest in other languages, particularly Italian. She occasionally traveled for her job, notably to Chicago, where she attended meetings with benefactors, visiting professors, and the Art Institute. Additionally, she visited Gina, a college friend who had been an Italian exchange student and was now working in Chicago. When our children were 8 and 10, global terrorist activities made my skill set highly valuable to the federal government. I was recruited to work full-time for a 2-year period involving extensive travel. Before accepting the assignment, I discussed it with Laura at length, as it would require more travel for that period, possibly longer, with occasional absences lasting more than a month. Laura encouraged me to accept, expressing that she and the girls would miss me but would manage fine. Unfortunately, my government assignment meant I was away for 2 consecutive Christmases, when Grace was 9 and 10 and Angela 11 and 12, which was heart-wrenching. Laura took the girls to visit Gina in Chicago during this time. I maintained daily phone contact with them throughout their week-long visit, and they appeared content. Gina's relatives, including kids around our daughters' ages, were also present. Shortly before Thanksgiving, after over 2 years providing expertise to combat terrorism, I returned to full-time consulting with minimal travel. Laura continued occasional travel, usually about once a month for 2 or 3 days, mostly to Chicago. I gladly assumed all parental duties for Grace and Angela when she was away, although sometimes they accompanied her. It's expected that girls may grow closer to their mother, and although I had a good relationship with Grace and Angela, they rarely confided in me or sought my opinion on personal matters, contrary to their openness with Laura. It didn't bother me much, except for one thing. They never shared their experiences, or were as talkative about their trips with their mother to Chicago. While not withdrawn, they never voluntarily provided information and often playfully changed the subject. Just before 18-year-old Grace went to an out-of-state college and Angela was a junior at another out-of-state college, Laura experienced a dark period. Upon discovering her tears on multiple occasions, I inquired about the cause. She attributed it to becoming an empty nester and suggested a shopping trip to Chicago with the girls. The trip was hastily planned and apparently required several long phone conversations with Gina, in Italian. Since I didn't understand Italian, I accepted Laura's account of the details without doubt, despite her being unusually emotional in the days leading up to their departure. Laura returned from Chicago after an additional 3 days, showing a more positive outlook, though not entirely back to normal. However, what truly surprised me was the limited number of purchases they brought back from their shopping trip. Upon inquiry, I learned that some items would be shipped later, including those sent directly to the girls' college addresses. I did observe a positive change in my bed life, which was never problematic, except during my prolonged absences when I remained faithful to Laura. The improvement coincided with Grace leaving for school. I attributed this positive shift to Laura and me growing closer as empty nesters, relishing the heightened lovemaking. Then, the pivotal event in my story unfolded. Update. I took an unplanned break from work around noon on a Thursday without informing Laura, who was at her usual workplace. Originally intending to play 9 holes of golf, my plans were thwarted by rain. Nevertheless, I was preparing for our upcoming anniversary and wanted to surprise Laura with a party. To execute this plan, I consulted with an event planner. Around 3 p.m., a delivery man arrived with a wooden crate marked "Fragile." Using a dolly, he brought it up the 4 front stairs to our house. The crate was addressed to Laura, and after signing for it, we positioned it in the living room with the "This Side Up" label properly displayed. The delivery of the crate struck me as unusual, and I couldn't fathom its contents. Examining the return address, which read Romano Photography Studios, along with an address in Chicago's Center City, I called Laura at work to inform her about the delivery. Initially quiet, she mentioned it was work-related and supposed to be sent to her office, with a plan to have someone assist in bringing it to the office the next day. While this explanation seemed rational, 3 factors raised suspicions. 1. The prolonged silence on the phone, unusual for the talkative Laura. 2. Her commanding tone when instructing not to open it, coupled with a stressed voice. And 3. Her overall uptight demeanor. Intrigued, I took photos of the crate and entered the return address information into my laptop. Upon Laura's return from work, she hurriedly inspected the crate, appearing suspicious of tampering. When I asked about its contents, she became vague and standoffish. Sensing something amiss, I offered to help open it, not only to be helpful, but also to gauge her reaction. However, she insisted on inspecting it at work for potential damage and a possible insurance claim. The next morning, before I left for work, 2 maintenance personnel from her college carefully moved the crate to a school van under Laura's supervision. When I shared my enthusiasm about the school exhibition, I was really trying to gauge Laura's response. She avoided eye contact and hesitated, mentioning uncertainly that she wasn't sure if that was the purpose, but assured me that she would let me know if they decided on an exhibition. The fact that she stuttered twice within 14 hours discussing the same topic, something unusual for the usually eloquent Laura, only fueled my curiosity even more. If that didn't pique my interest, I wasn't sure what would. The 5th aspect that unsettled me and raised suspicions was Laura's subsequent silence about the mysterious crate. Over the following 2 weeks, since the arrival of the enigmatic package, I gathered most publicly available information about Romano Photography Studios. This entity served as the U.S. business front for the globally renowned photographer Piero Romano, someone I might have vaguely heard of previously. Surprisingly, Laura, despite frequently discussing artists and photographers in connection with her photography hobby and university work, had never mentioned him. Piero Romano had a distinctive style, with most of his photos featuring both genuine photographic realism and various effects. He excelled in traditional photographic techniques like bokeh, blur, panning, rule of thirds, and long exposure, often combining multiple effects in a single photo. Additionally, he was the sole practitioner of a unique effect named after him, Romano Abilità Artistica, loosely translating to Romano's artistry. While challenging to describe in words, my attempt would be that it renders some features super realistic, while adjacent ones appear fuzzy, with changes in color or shade within the same object. However, this description falls short of capturing its true essence. While much of the information about Piero was intellectually and artistically intriguing, 2 astonishing facts stood out. The person overseeing administration at his studio was his niece, Gina Romano Bianchi, a friend of Laura's whom I had met only once and never in Chicago, known to me by her married name, Gina Bianchi. Additionally, Piero had died in a car crash on September 1st of the preceding year, and his memorial service in Chicago, before his body was sent to his ancestral burial plot in Italy, took place on September 6th. The timing seemed highly coincidental, Laura becoming emotional around September 2nd, supposedly about becoming an empty nester, and her and the girls' shopping trip to Chicago from September 5th through 8th. Though not a rocket scientist, I hold a master's in chemistry from one of the top 10 schools in the country, allowing me to piece it together. Despite the crushing realization, the only plausible explanation was that Laura had been involved in a genuine love affair with Piero Romano for at least 10 years, and my daughters were aware of it. Another intriguing detail emerged: a Chicago exhibition of Piero's most famous and stimulating works, including those owned by private collectors and some never seen publicly before, was scheduled for April 16th, 18th, 3 weeks away from when I discovered this information. I was confident that Laura would have a business trip to Chicago around that time, despite the 18th being my birthday, and the exhibition likely featuring the photographs from the crate delivered to our house 2 weeks earlier. Update. I have never felt more driven in my life to devise a plan for addressing my unfaithful wife and disloyal daughters. Due to my initial rage, which I needed to suppress to execute my intentions, I had to arrange a business trip for the night I discovered the incriminating information and 2 nights thereafter. I left a heartfelt message on Laura's work phone, apologizing profusely and promising to make it up to you, before packing what I needed for a 3-night stay in a local hotel. Part 1 of my plan involved preparing all the necessary divorce papers to serve and file once I obtained the expected proof. Part 2 aimed to find a way to have someone visit and film the Chicago exhibition on its opening day, the 16th, which was by invitation only. Part 3 focused on organizing my affairs to secure as many material possessions and funds as possible. My sentiments toward Laura were indifferent, and I was very close to feeling the same about Grace and Angela. Part 4 was about ultimate revenge, even after the divorce's conclusion. Part 1 was no problem. I got a recommendation for a good divorce attorney, Gail Schiff. She advised me on everything I needed to do, and despite her recommendation for irreconcilable differences as grounds, she was willing to proceed with long-standing infidelity. Gail just needed a modicum of proof before she could file the papers, which I expected to have for her on the morning of the 17th. She could arrange for service on Laura by a law enforcement agent other than the county sheriff, along with a private process server to record events on the last night of the exhibition, on the 18th. For Part 2, I gathered as much information as I could about art appraisers with any relation to Chicago. I found a young appraiser named Roberto Milan trying to build his business. I went to see him in Chicago, talked with him for almost a full day. Roberto was familiar with Piero's work, certain he could get an invitation to the opening on the 16th, not averse to filming the photos I thought would interest me using a small, expensive, easily hidden HD camera I gave him. He conveyed his belief that he could provide a thorough and high appraisal of the photos I anticipated, his final words expressing the desire for a challenge to establish himself as a legitimate player in the art appraisal world convinced me to hire Roberto. For a segment of Parts 3 and 4, I cashed in 2 bearer bonds from our safe deposit box, totaling about $25,000. I couldn't remember if Laura knew about them, and she certainly wouldn't now. They were now worth together about $25,000. For another segment of Part 3, I provided my attorney with a complete list of all our assets, including an appraisal of our house. I took photographs of all Laura's jewelry and all contents of our safe deposit box, minus the bearer bonds, and provided my attorney with updated bank statements, credit card numbers, and outstanding purchases, retirement plans, and brokerage accounts. As a small segment of Part 4, on the last day of my supposed absence, I sneaked into the house. While Laura was at work, I took a magic marker and erased my face from every photograph in the dozen or so albums she had compiled over the years. Having never examined them in their entirety before, I was surprised to find that I appeared in no more than 15% of the photos. I also discovered 2 previously unseen photos that, even if I had come across them before, I would likely have considered innocent. They featured Laura, Gina, Grace, Angela, and notably, Piero. I made high-quality scans and photocopies of these photos before returning them to the album, marked with a black marker across them, an arrow pointing to Piero, and a legend declaring him the love of Laura's life. 2 days after my return from the business trip, Laura informed me that she had to go to Chicago from the morning of the 15th to the afternoon of the 19th. Expressing disappointment about not spending my birthday together, I suggested accompanying her, and she smoothly demurred, stating it was all business. She promised to take me to a resort the following weekend, asserting she would make it up to me in a way I hadn't ever experienced before. Following that statement with a kiss, at that point in time, I regarded her as a $3 fancy woman, so I just enjoyed myself. She gagged a little and obviously wasn't pleased, but pretended that she was, asserting it was only a sample of what's to come, darling. For all of parts 1, 3, and 4 of my plan, there was a particularly risky aspect. However, the rest, especially after getting comfortable with and hiring the art appraiser, I was quite confident would fall into place. The risky part involved talking to Grace. Deciding that I needed a face-to-face with her, as soon as I dropped Laura off at the airport on the morning of the 15th, I drove the approximately 180 miles from Columbus to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, where Grace was studying chemical engineering. Why Grace and not Angela? While both girls took after their mother more than me, Grace was by far more like me, at least in terms of how her brain worked, than Angela. Neither Angela nor Laura could ever conceive of a course of study in chemical engineering, closely related to my degrees in chemistry. Also, Grace had a harder time lying than either Angela or Laura, and although her failure to advise me of Laura's love affair with Piero suggested otherwise, or maybe not, she seemed more concerned with a nuclear family than Angela was. I called ahead to Grace's cell phone when I was about halfway there, and she actually seemed excited to meet. I told her I'd take her to a late lunch at a real restaurant. We met at the eatery of her choosing, about a mile from campus, and got a secluded booth. After our meal, I informed Gracie that there was a very serious matter I needed to discuss with her, and she displayed a perplexed expression. Before continuing, I asked for her assurance not to disclose our conversation to anyone, including her mom and Angela, until the day after my birthday. I made a request for her promise, raising my hand in the I swear position. She seemed surprised and commented, "Wow, sounds serious." "Okay, Dad, I promise, I swear," she assured, lifting her hand and attempting to force a smile. I then revealed, "I learned about your mother's involvement with Piero Romano, and I'm contemplating the possibility of a divorce." "Oh no, Daddy," she exclaimed, covering her mouth with her hand, tears welling up instantly. I continued, "There's only one hope. I need to gather all the information you have about it, and I need you to undergo a DNA test." "What?" she exclaimed, nearly on the verge of a meltdown. Observing that the restaurant wasn't the appropriate setting, I instructed her to meet me outside, and afterward, we'd head to my car once I settled the bill. I located the waitress, paid in cash with a $1.20 tip, and discovered Grace, still in tears on the sidewalk. Once in my car, I felt the need to get to the bottom of things. I told Grace that the survival of our family depended on her opening up. After a brief period of crying where she struggled to express herself, and with me merely gazing at her, she began to share. She revealed that she didn't realize Mom was involved with Piero, or Uncle Piero, as we were told to call him, until she was 12, despite displays of affection every time we were in Chicago, especially at Christmas. Grace became aware of this through remarks Angela made. Angela knew before she did, but Grace lacked the sophistication to understand. When she confronted Mom, Mom explained it as an adult matter. She explained that she was in love with 2 men and insisted that I would understand when I grew up. Mom emphasized that I must never know about it because it could mean the end of our family, as I was deemed too insensitive, that's the word she used, to comprehend such complexities. Consequently, I was sworn to secrecy. Grace broke down again for a while and then continued to recount her experiences. She shared that she had hoped Piero's funeral would mark the end of it all and that you would never find out. However, after Mom made a scene at Piero's casket, Grace confronted her once more. She told Mom that if she jumped into someone else's arms, she would reveal the entire story to me. Mom rebuked Grace, questioning how she could think of her as a tramp. Mom claimed to have loved Piero and me, asserting that there would be no one else. She simply needed to honor Piero's memory. Grace believed her and prayed that the day when I found out would never come, confident that Mom would not engage in another love or even a closeness affair. Update. I gleaned additional details from her until I sensed it would be counterproductive to press further. She remained in anguish, just as I had anticipated, when I revealed the second purpose of my visit. I expressed my hope to reconcile with Grace's mother based on the information she had shared. However, I needed one more thing for clarity. I asked both of us to submit DNA samples to determine if she was my biological daughter. Grace cried, objecting, insisting that I was her only father. "I know that I'm your father," I reassured her, "but I have to know whether I'm your biological one too." Despite her protests, she eventually agreed. I presented her with the letter in the envelope addressed to the lab and sealed it. The instructions were to mail the results to both Grace directly and to me. As I drove her back to campus, she observed as I dropped the envelope into an express mail mailbox. When we hugged goodbye, she pleaded with me to forgive Mom and make it work. I explained that I couldn't promise that at the moment, as I don't lie like she does. However, I acknowledged that Grace had done her part to increase the chances that it would work. I reminded her not to tell anyone about our talk until the 19th at the earliest. She assured me with a smile, and then hesitated, mentioning one more thing. She explained that Mom and Angela would be attending a Chicago exhibition of Piero's works, some of which featured photographs of Mom, on my birthday. She conveyed Mom's apology for the unfortunate timing, but clarified that Mom had to attend as works inherited from Piero under his will would be displayed. Mom wanted Grace to join as well, but she had too much schoolwork. I smiled and casually responded, "I know. Thanks for being honest." After another hug, she left. Unseen by her, I shed tears, realizing that my relationship with Angela was now as dead as the one with Laura. I hadn't yet decided if I could salvage it with Grace. Grace remained unaware that I had recorded our conversation in the car. There was one thing that Grace didn't know that would cause her pain and was a segment of part 4 of my plan. The swabs that I put into the envelope that was supposedly mine belonged to an Italian background janitor who worked in my office building, someone I had been friendly with over the years. I promised to pay to have his ancestry determined as a birthday present to him. He didn't even ask why I needed 3 swabs instead of 1 to do that. The one I did send in for testing his heritage showed that he was more than 80% Italian, with some Eastern and Western European small contributions, which made him happy. Why did I put an Italian's DNA in what was to be tested instead of mine? Because I wanted everyone to hurt. The reason I used an Italian is that during DNA testing, they can find out the heritage of both contributors, even if comparing 2 sets. And since Piero was Italian, I wanted everyone to conclude that he was the father of Grace, and if I could work it out, Angela. I crossed my fingers, hoping Grace wouldn't spill the beans. I spoke to her on the phone on the 16th and 18th, and she assured me she hadn't. And since I hadn't heard from Laura, I was sure that was true. Around 11 p.m. on the 16th, Roberto Milan emailed photos of the relevant parts of the Romano exhibit to me. They hurt me deeper than I thought they would. I shook like a leaf as I sobbed while viewing them. There was a series of 10 photos, increasing in size from the first to the last, all with distinctive Romano characteristics, including the last 2 brilliant Romano Abilità Artistica effects. The series was entitled Natale Amore, Christmas Love. What initially broke me out were the first 2 in the series, which showed 2 girls in the background of a photo of a woman who was unquestionably Laura. While there was blurring of the girls' faces, there was no doubt from their hair, what they were wearing, Christmas gifts from my mother, and relative sizes that it was Angela and Grace when they were around 9 and 11. In the second photo of the first 2, one of Laura's body was exposed, and she had what could only be described as a duck-me look. The next 3 in the series showed Laura in increasingly less dress, until in the final one she was, well, you can imagine. The second series started again with a photo where the girls were in the background, this time somewhat older, with the last 4 progressively risque until the second to last, which had Laura in an exceptionally suggestive pose, and the last one where the clear implication was that she had just been ducked and was in bliss. After I threw up, drank some ginger ale, and had a good cry, I looked at the photos again. If they didn't break my heart, I'd have to say that the last 2 photos were probably the best of their type I had ever seen. I read the text accompanying Roberto Milan's report. "Sorry, I know that this will be hard on you. The collection is worth a minimum of $300,000, more likely $500,000. The second to last photo alone would bring $125,000 to $175,000 if sold separately. The last two photos are the best execution of Romano Abilità Artistica effects in history, not just in my opinion, but in that of at least 4 other appraisers and art critics that I overheard talking about them. I asked Gina if any were for sale. She put me in touch with the owner per Piero's will, not surprisingly, Laura. Laura said they weren't for sale at the present time because they were priceless, and the 4 where she was completely en dot would not be sold until after her passaway. I wouldn't want the general public, and especially my husband, seeing me like that while I'm alive, she said. The especially my husband with a laugh. Update. I sent the digital recording of Grace's words, along with Roberto's photos and words, via email to my attorney, Gail Schiff. She contacted me at 7:30 on the morning of the 17th. I conveyed that my petition for divorce was clearly justified, citing infidelity. I informed her that a law enforcement officer would serve Laura the following night at the gala. I added, "There's one thing I need to add," and mentioned that I would drop it off so she could include it when expressing it to the process server along with the divorce papers. I handed an envelope, addressed to Angela, to Gail. It contained a letter from me, a swab from the Italian janitor's cheek, a container with a new swab, and an envelope with express mail postage addressed to a DNA lab, accompanied by instructions. The letter to Angela conveyed the message that if there was any hope for a future relationship between us, she needed to swab the inside of her cheek, place it in the envelope addressed to the DNA lab with my swab already in it, and send it via express mail. The lab had instructions to mail the results directly to her at school and to me. I emphasized that even if she didn't desire a future relationship, she still needed to comply. If she didn't, I made it clear that I would ensure our finances were tied up for years, leading her to say goodbye to tuition, room and board, and expenses for the end of her junior year and her senior year at the expensive private college she attended. I pointed out that even if her feelings towards me matched her past actions and inactions, it was in her self-interest to do as I asked. I mentioned that Grace had already complied. The letter was signed, "Your father, Grant Oster." I was glad that I wasn't there when the reality hit the fan in Chicago on my birthday. The process server reported to Gail that Laura and Angela were all smiles as they hobnobbed with the public at about 9 p.m. on the 18th. They were perplexed when they were handed the envelopes by the law enforcement officer as the process server with him took photos. They opened up the envelopes on the spot. The law enforcement officer left, but the process server stayed behind, taking more photos until he was kicked out. The photos he emailed to Gail, and Gail to me, showed Laura sinking lower and lower onto the ground, ultimately landing in a fetal position, and Angela first distraught, then angry, and then trying to tend to her prone mother. Angela called me the morning of the 19th. After expressing her disgust with the way I handled serving the papers, I responded strongly, using language I had never used with her before, expressing that it was tough, and she should tell it to someone who cares. Following this, she stated that she wasn't inclined to do the DNA test. In a sarcastic tone, I questioned whether she didn't want to find out who her biological father is, as opposed to the one who has been supporting her all these years. She replied, affirming that I am her father. In response, I expressed uncertainty, stating that maybe I am, maybe not. However, I emphasized that one thing is certain. I've already instructed my attorney to freeze all of her mother's and my accounts. I assured her that there would be no money for her education or living expenses since she's 20 years old in the future, unless she mails that envelope with her cheek swab. Now that I think of it, I mentioned to her that I would need a video of her swabbing her cheek, putting it in the envelope, and mailing it, all at the same time, in order to believe her. This was due to the lies she had told me over the years. I emphasized that I hadn't lied to her. She retorted, pointing out that I hadn't told the whole truth, as my sister would have her tuition paid. I expressed my displeasure, stating that she seemed to be as unpleasant as her mother, and I had no intention of wasting time discussing it further because it disgusted me. I gave her an ultimatum: either do as I say and email me the video, or this would be the last conversation we ever had in her life. After that, I forcefully hung up the phone.
It's satisfying to have a landline where slamming the phone down makes a statement, unlike a cell phone where pushing the red button provides no emphasis. The mother did not attempt to call me from the 18th to the 21st. She likely delayed her return to Columbus for 2 days, consoling herself with her close friend Gina. The excitement at the exhibition on the 18th made its way into 2 local Chicago papers, complete with a photo of Laura, seemingly provided by the process server. Amid the urge to expel my stomach contents, I found some amusement. It was apparent that Laura had visited the house, which I no longer considered a home, on the 22nd. I deduced this as the envelope I had left on the new front door, reinforced with steel and a changed lock, similar to the side and rear doors, had vanished. My attorney's message on my cell phone indicated the need for a discussion. The envelope was addressed to Vile Ducking Slot, an assumption I believed Laura would recognize. My brief message inside conveyed, "Hey, contact your attorney regarding the retrieval of your personal belongings. The sooner we sell the house and conclude our sham of a marriage, the better. I'll resist any attempt by you to return to this house until it is sold. Consider doing something decent for once in our farcical relationship, and don't resist it. Even though economic reasons seem to be your sole motivation, given your lack of love or respect for me. Your formerly clueless ex, Grant." P.S. The doors are booby-trapped. Any unauthorized entry will start all of your previous family albums on fire. It required a court appearance by the attorneys for something to be worked out with respect to living arrangements. I probably could have gotten exactly what I wanted if I didn't put that P.S. on the note to the slot, but I couldn't help myself. We finally, through our attorneys, agreed to both vacate the house and immediately put it on the market, with the amount of our temporary housing expenses considered in the division of assets. Laura tried to be difficult in the monetary negotiations, but she had no bargaining power because she acquired her precious photographs from Piero while we were still married. When I demanded 5 photographs, she could choose 1, then me, etc., until all 10 were divvied up. According to her attorney, she got hysterical, especially since by that time she had seen how I had doctored the family photo albums. At Laura's insistence, we took Roberto's appraisal of the photographs, one done by an appraiser hired by her, and one by a neutral appraiser. Hilariously, Roberto's was the lowest one, costing her $200,000 more than if she had accepted his appraisal. Since this was seriously cutting into what she would end up with, she offered me 2 of the photographs that she chose. However, she rescinded that offer when I had my attorney tell hers that I agreed as long as she had them delivered to the local firing range and she watched what I did to them. When all was said and done, by the time the divorce proceedings had concluded, Laura was left with her personal possessions, half the furniture, and 1/4 of the sale price of the house. Nothing else, including no alimony, but a suspended jail sentence. More about that later. We did agree to jointly pay all of the college expenses of Grace and Angela until they graduated, but nothing more than that. As for Angela and Grace, as expected, the DNA results came back that they were not my biological daughters. That infuriated Laura so much that she almost had a stroke. I talked to Grace about it, not Angela, who had complied with my request solely to get her college expenses paid, and apparently was happy with no future relationship with me. My daughter conveyed that her mother claimed the DNA test results were incorrect. According to her, Mom asserted that during her marriage to me, she never had any close relations with anyone other than me and Piero. Additionally, she insisted that she never even met Piero before our daughter was born. I responded by questioning why, if that were the case, our daughter's father had Italian ancestry like Piero, while my family lineage is entirely Dutch on both sides. I expressed my skepticism, highlighting that her mother has proven to be a pathological liar throughout our more than 24-year relationship, deceiving me about her love for me. Despite all this, she mentioned that her mother desired another DNA test. I explained to my children that the DNA test wasn't going to happen since they were not minors, and it was unrelated to the divorce. I clarified that I merely wanted to know the truth in my mind, and I wanted both of them to be aware of it. I reminded them that they witnessed me swabbing my cheek, putting the swab in the envelope, and then mailing it.
In response to my daughter's request, I mentioned that her mother's desire for a face-to-face conversation wasn't something I would entertain. I informed them that I instructed my attorney to ignore her repeated requests. I questioned why I would have any reason to engage in a conversation with her. My daughter pleaded with me not to use derogatory terms for her mother and expressed her continued love for her despite her faults. She asked me, as a favor, to talk with her for an hour. I conveyed to Grace that I couldn't comply with her request. While I had forgiven her and desired to maintain a relationship with her, I made it clear that there was nothing, absolutely nothing, that would lead me to engage in a conversation with her mother. Update. Now for Laura's suspended jail sentence and getting only 1/4 of the proceeds of the sale of the house. After my phone conversation with Grace about the DNA test and Laura's desire for a talk with me, she did something stupid. I thought that she might pull something, so I hooked up and walked around with a panic button connected directly to a private security company. One night, a woman knocked on the door of the condo that I was renting during the divorce proceedings until the final financial details were worked out. I didn't see the two big guys and Laura standing out to the side when I looked through the peephole. As soon as I opened the door, the two big guys burst in and grabbed me, but not before I pushed my silent panic button. After being forcefully seized, they pulled me to a chair and secured me to it while Laura came in and the other woman departed. Laura expressed regret for resorting to such measures, attributing it to my refusal to meet with her and redo the DNA test, which she insisted was incorrect. Following this, she initiated a conversation with some upbeat remarks, claiming she always loved me and asserting that her affection extended to Piero as well. She contended that her heart was expansive enough to encompass love for both of us. She realized that we were past the point of reconciliation, but just wanted to get things off her chest. As she was talking to me, she was holding a swab up. Obviously, she was going to force a DNA sample from me. It really irritated her that I made no verbal response whatsoever to anything that she said. I refused to even acknowledge her presence, trying my best to avoid all eye contact. Fortunately, as she was about to have her two goons pry my mouth open for a DNA swab, there was a response to my panic button. The security company had called the police, and 3 cops, with weapons drawn, barged into the house. They found me tied up, and one of the miscreants had illegal items in his pants pocket. I explained the situation. The cops ignored Laura's plea to simply let them go. They meant no damage, and they arrested the 3 of them. The little kidnapping event didn't play well with the judge in our divorce proceedings. After she let it be known that if she had to rule it would be really bad for Laura, I got the division of assets and other considerations set forth above. The criminal court took pity on Laura since it was her first offense. She got a 2-year suspended sentence and a $10,000 fine, which was from her share alone of the marital assets. The 2 guys didn't fare as well because they had shady histories. One got a year in prison before parole was possible, and the one with the illegal items got 5 years before parole was possible. Part 4 of my plan did not end when the divorce was final, although I will not admit here or anywhere else that I had anything to do with it. Just karma is what I always respond when asked about it. 18 months after the divorce was final, I was on a cruise of the Caribbean with a 32-year-old hot little divorcee who loved to be treated right and richly. She looked too much like Laura at that age and was too hot for me to look for a permanent relationship with her, but she was fun to be with, even though she wore me out dating. While I was dating on the cruise, Laura's apartment was broken into while she was at work. The place was trashed. Some items were stolen during a break-in, including the second most provocative and valuable Romano photo of Laura. More items were destroyed than stolen, however, including 7 of the other 8 remaining Romano photos and all of the family photo albums. Upon my return, I became a suspect. While it was impossible for me to have committed the crime myself, since I was on a boat 2,000 miles away, Laura insisted to the cops that I paid someone to carry it out. As soon as the cops approached me and hinted that I was a suspect, I refused to talk to them and sought legal representation. After scrutinizing my phone and financial records, which naturally excluded the 2 cashed-out bearer bonds that were never part of the divorce estate, they found no evidence that I could have paid anyone for the act. Furthermore, there was no association found with anyone capable of committing such deeds. 6 months after their initial contact with me, it seemed that the cops practically gave up, even though I am sure that Laura continued to pester them. Once the statute of limitations expired, I threw a party, my "it's all finally over" celebration, attended mostly by friends. My parents were no longer alive, but my brother, his wife, my 2 nephews, my new love interest, Melody, Melody's 2 adult children, and Grace, her husband, and my granddaughter were present. I have had no relationship with Angela, was not invited to her wedding, and wouldn't have attended even if invited. I learned from Grace that Angela's husband caught her cheating, and she is in the early stages of divorce proceedings. Laura gave Grace an ultimatum: either sever all ties with me or with her. To everyone's surprise, including mine, Grace chose me, likely because she was convinced that Laura was, as I had represented, a pathological liar. More importantly, Grace recognized the negativity of her mother, throwing her relationship with her paramour in her daughter's face and having them lie to cover up her cheating. Grace didn't want her children exposed to that attitude. Only one thing has caused friction between Grace and me in the last 5 years. I disclosed the truth about the DNA testing. She was initially upset with me but forgave me, just as I forgave her for her duplicity over the years. She was actually very pleased that I was her biological father, and I had another DNA test done to provide additional confirmation.
"I'm really sorry, Mr. Walker. I hate delivering bad news," John Michaels said, handing me an envelope with a report on my wife's dealings with her ex-boss, Grant Jacobs, along with photos and a DVD. Though I glanced at the photos, I hadn't yet watched the DVD. Part of me resisted, but I knew I had to confront it. "Do you know how long this has been happening?" I asked. John checked his notes before answering. "Based on what we've found, it's been ongoing for at least 10, maybe 12 years. It started around when your wife was up for a promotion," John said, aligning with the birth of our daughter Sophie. I decided to get DNA tests. Another worry struck me: STDs. The report showed Grant had affairs with other married women, although we'd been carnal since her retirement. What risks had I faced unknowingly? I needed testing. Scanning the report again, I grimaced at Aaron's note that Linda seemed unaware of Grant's affairs. "If it helps, Grant claimed he never meant to break up your marriage. He just wanted physical engaging," John said, "and they never did anything at your home." I'd let John install cameras, hoping our marital space hadn't been violated. "No, that's not comforting, Mr. Michaels," I said. Grant Jacobs was no favorite of mine. Now I understood why. "There's more, Mr. Walker," John continued. "Jacob's sister Natalie knew about the affair and might have helped." This saddened me. I'd always thought Natalie was decent. "Damn," I muttered. "Have you talked to a lawyer?" John asked. "Not yet. I wanted to know the truth first," I admitted. "Well, Lisa Hawkins is my go-to for these situations. She's top-notch and hates cheaters. I can send this over to her and let her know you'll be contacting her," John offered. "That would be helpful. Thanks. I'll call her office for an appointment," I said, taking his business card. "Can I offer a suggestion?" John asked. "Of course," I replied. "Let Lisa handle this. I know it's tough, but don't risk getting into trouble over it. This is real life, not some online drama. You have kids to think about," he advised. "I get it. Thank you." After paying, I left his office, feeling like my whole marriage was a sham. It hurt, but John was right. I sat in my car and cried for 15 minutes. After pulling myself together, I scheduled an appointment with Lisa Hawkins for the next day. She needed financial documents. On the way home, I bought cigarettes, a habit I hadn't indulged in since college. Then I went to a bar for a beer, trying to cope. "You okay?" the bartender asked as I smoked. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. "Unfortunately, yeah," he said with a smile. "Let me guess, you found out your wife's been cheating?" "Yeah, for 12 years, I confessed. "I've seen worse," he nodded. "My grandpa used to say, I felt sorry for myself because I had no shoes. Then I met a fella who had no feet. It gets better. Take care of business. Drinking won't help," he advised. "He sounds wise," I said. "He was," the bartender agreed. "Finish your beer, then head home. You won't find answers at the bottom of that glass." I nodded, knowing he was right. Sipping my beer, I pondered the unimaginable. Linda cheating on me. Over time, subtle signs emerged that individually seemed innocuous, but collectively painted a troubling picture. For example, after our second child, Sophie, was born, I underwent a vasectomy, yet Linda resumed birth control. When questioned, she explained it as caution and cycle regulation, which I accepted despite my lack of expertise. Then, as she started traveling with Grant for her new job, her wardrobe choices seemed unsuitable for business, with her suggesting that entertaining was a significant aspect of her role, which, now I understood, included entertaining Grant. I used to call her in the evenings when she was away. I noticed she was always in her room, and sometimes I thought I heard a man's voice nearby. Occasionally, Linda's voice cracked as she spoke. I couldn't explain it then, but I reasoned Grant might be with her. There were times I caught a faint whiff of Grant's aftershave on Linda's clothes, making me nauseous. It seemed she had been in close contact with him. Then there were the Friday afternoons she claimed to work after her retirement. She explained it as needing her skills for one afternoon a week, strictly business. Now I realize her special skills involved more than business. Her one afternoon a week turned into 2 or 3, and her occasional trips increased, often lasting the entire weekend. This unfolded over the last 4 months. Surprisingly, Linda's attitude toward me stayed the same, remaining affectionate and caring since our wedding. She appeared happy at home with the kids, even though I took on more caregiving duties due to her busy schedule. Feeling burdened, I hired John's firm to investigate, confirming my suspicions. Now the only question is how to split everything. If it were a drunken mistake, maybe I could forgive, but this betrayal over a decade was deliberate. Time for consequences. I finished my drink, nodded to the bartender, and left. Coming home, I saw her car in the garage, which was unexpected. After closing the garage, I found Linda in the house, noticing the smell of cigarettes and beer on me. "You've been smoking," she noted, her concern evident. "And I smell beer. Is everything okay?" "No, today's been terrible," I admitted. "What happened?" she asked, genuinely worried, though I couldn't help but question if it was genuine. "Something," I replied. "I'll be in my office for the night. I won't be much company." "Can I help?" she offered. "Yeah," I thought, "undo what you've done." "I'm afraid not," I said. "By the way, I'll be away this weekend, starting Friday," she mentioned. It was only Tuesday, and she's planning another trip already. Again. "What? Another one? Didn't you just go on a getaway?" I questioned. "Yes, but something came up," she explained. "Business, you know." "Sure," I replied sarcastically. "What about Sophie's birthday party?" "I am aware," she acknowledged, "but I can't avoid it. Could you explain to her why I won't be there, please?" "No," I refused. "You missed Erin's birthday and our anniversary last year. You can explain to our daughter why you'd rather be with Grant than celebrate her birthday here." "John, please. You're being unreasonable," she said. "No, Linda," I stated firmly. "You supposedly retired months ago after your company was sold. But you've been gone so much I can't help but wonder what's really going on. Is there something you'd like to tell me?" "What are you saying? Are you accusing me of having an affair?" she asked defensively. "What would you think if the situation were reversed?" I questioned. She backed off a bit after that. "I see your point," she conceded. "But believe me, it's just business." "So you've said," I replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do. Please don't interrupt me. You'll have to look after the kids tonight." I retreated into my home office, closing and locking the door. I heard Linda attempt to open it. "John?" she called out. "Please, John, talk to me." "Leave me alone, Linda," I said through gritted teeth. "I'm busy." I heard her shuffle away as I gathered the information Lisa said she would need. Then I turned to the evidence John provided. Reading the report, it was difficult to comprehend that this was the woman I had loved and supported for the last 12 years. I donned my headphones and started the DVD. Unless you've been in my shoes, you can't comprehend the range of emotions that flood you when witnessing the woman you adore giving herself to another man willingly. I didn't care how John obtained these videos. All I knew was that any love I once held for Linda had vanished. As I watched her with Grant, I vowed never to touch her again. I forced myself to listen to their carnal conversations. "Hey, are we still on for this weekend?" Grant asked, holding her close. "Definitely," Linda grinned. "Can't go too long without you." "What about Sophie's party?" he asked. "John will handle it," she assured. "He's better with the kids." "I worry he'll catch on," Grant said. "You're supposed to be retired. I've told you I'm not giving us up," she affirmed. "Family's important, but so are we." "I hope you're right," Grant said. "What if he finds out?" "I'll deal with it," she said confidently. "It won't be easy," he warned. "I'll manage," she said. "He hasn't caught on in 12 years. "How long will this last?" Grant asked. "As long as possible," she declared, shutting off the video. "You just might get your wish." She tucked the DVD away and approached the office door. "What?" I said. "The kids are going to bed. Can you at least say goodnight?" she asked. "Yeah, hold on," I said, shutting down my computer and going upstairs. Despite my turmoil, I smiled as I tucked them in. Sophie seemed worried. "Are you okay, Daddy?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm fine. Go to sleep, sweetheart." "I love you," I said. "I love you too," she said, kissing my cheek. After leaving her room, I went downstairs for coffee. "I kept dinner warm," Linda said. "I'm not hungry," I said, going to the patio. Lighting a cigarette, Linda joined me, trying to kiss me. I turned my head, letting her kiss my cheek. "What's wrong?" she asked, concerned. "You haven't smoked since college." "We don't always get what we want," I said. "What do you mean?" she asked. I shook my head. "It's too late," I said. "Too late for what?" she pressed. "You're savvy," I said. "Figure it out, please. Leave me alone." "Maybe I can help," she offered. "Sorry for being abrupt," I said, softening. "Work's getting to me, maybe in a couple of days." I didn't like lying, but why not to a liar? "Okay," she said softly, tears forming. She went inside. I smoked 2 more cigarettes before joining her. After a shower to rid myself of the smoke, I wore pajamas rarely used and got into bed. Linda reached out, but I pushed her away, a first in our marriage. "John," she started. I turned away, refusing her kiss. "Good night, Linda," I muttered. She cried softly, but I didn't care. The next day, I readied for work and spent time with the kids before leaving without acknowledging Linda. She looked at me strangely. "Don't I get a kiss anymore?" she asked. "Sorry," I said, blowing her a kiss. "I love you," she said. "Yeah, me too," I replied, leaving. At the office, work was tough. I confided in my boss, who advised taking time off if needed. Later, I met Lisa. "Good afternoon, Mr. Walker," she greeted. We discussed my situation. "I want as much as I can get," I said, "especially custody." "Mothers usually get custody," she cautioned. "I've been their caregiver for a decade," I countered, and she admitted I'm a better parent. "That's helpful. We can use that," Lisa said, reviewing the financial data. "Your wife received a significant sum from the company sale. The dividends she gets rival your salary, which works in our favor." "So, does that mean no alimony?" I asked. "Or very little," Lisa confirmed. "She's still young, so she can work. If we secure custody for you, we might get child support from her." "What about the house?" I questioned. "If you get custody, you can stay in the house and she might pay half the mortgage. But if she gets custody, you might pay half the mortgage plus child support," she explained. "Or we could sell the house and split the proceeds." "And our retirement and bank accounts?" I pressed. "We'll leave retirement accounts alone. You keep your 401ks. The rest will be divided evenly," she assured. "What about Grant Jacobs? Can I sue him?" I asked. "Not in this state, but we'll mention him in the proceedings." "You could sue for emotional distress, but it might not go far," she said. "And his sister Natalie? She knew about it," I added. "We can file if you want," Lisa confirmed. "When can we file all of this?" I asked. "We can have it done by Friday," she said. "Any rush?" "I want her served late Saturday afternoon. She'll be away for the weekend with Grant," I revealed. "Ah, shock and awe. We can arrange that, but there's an extra cost for a Saturday process server," she noted. "That's fine. Go ahead," I instructed. "All right, John," she said, concluding with a handshake. She reminded me not to act rashly before taking my retainer check. Leaving her office, I felt in control again. At home, I found Linda's car in the garage, surprising as she was at the office on a Wednesday. Her warm car engine and the aroma of pot roast greeted me inside. "Hi there," Linda greeted from the kitchen. "You're home early. Everything all right?" "Yeah," I replied. "I hope today's better than yesterday," she said. "A bit. I'm managing," I said. "That's good. Dinner?" she asked. I made pot roast. "I'll have some," I agreed. "It smells great. Did you go to the office?" "Yeah, for a couple of hours," she said, "preparing for the weekend." "Did you talk to Sophie?" I asked. "Yes, she's not thrilled, but she'll come around," Linda assured. "Where are the kids?" I questioned. "In their rooms doing homework," she replied. "You're still going on this trip with Grant?" I probed. "Yes, purely business," she insisted. "Just business." "When do you plan to retire?" I asked. "I'm retired. They just need my expertise," she said. "Can't say how long they'll need me." "Seems like you might as well go back full time. You're practically doing it now," I remarked. "What do you mean?" she asked, puzzled. "With all the hours you're putting in, it's almost like you're on their payroll," I noted. "Why do you say that?" she inquired. "I'm actually making more now with my retirement." After changing into more relaxed attire, I complimented her cooking skills on the pot roast. She had always been exceptional, and I'd missed that. Spending time with the kids, I retreated into my office and locked the door. Linda knocked, realizing it was locked. "Planning to stay in here tonight?" she asked. "I think so. I still have a lot to do, and I'm feeling under the weather," I replied. "I'll crash on the futon to avoid getting you sick before your trip." "All right. Take care, John. I love you," she said. "Yeah, me too," I murmured, closing the door. Turning to my computer, I found what I needed, completed a form, and set a reminder to call the next day for confirmation. Thursday unfolded much like Wednesday, with Linda attempting to seduce me into bed wearing a sheer nightgown. However, knowing about her affair stripped away any allure her body held for me. "I'm sorry, Linda, but I feel a terrible migraine coming on," I murmured softly. "I'll rest here in the office tonight." A tear traced down her cheek as she turned away, but I remained indifferent. She called me at noon the next day to inform me of her departure. "I hope you're feeling better, John," she said. "Maybe we can reconnect when I return on Monday." "Thanks for letting me know," I replied. "I love you, John," she insisted. "Sure," I responded. "Have a safe trip. Goodbye, Linda." Ending the call, I dialed Lisa's number. "I'm filing the paperwork now, John," she informed me. They'll be served at 5:30 tomorrow at Grant's house, just as you requested. Natalie will be served on Monday." "Thank you, Lisa," I said, concluding the call. I locked up my office and returned home, preparing for the movers' arrival. I handed them a bag containing Linda's wedding dress alterations and a note, my wedding ring, and our torn marriage certificate, requesting it be delivered to Linda at Grant's house the next day at 5:30 p.m., along with two $50 bills as tips. "I'll handle this personally, Mr. Walker," the young man assured, taking the bag. "Thank you," I said. Reheating pot roast leftovers, I dined in the living room while watching TV. That night, I slept soundly in the master bed. At noon the next day, Linda's parents arrived with the children. I had been up preparing for Sophie's birthday party in the backyard, which started around 3 p.m. Linda had ordered a cake, which I picked up earlier that morning and stored in the fridge. "You've been busy," remarked Rhonda, Linda's mother, as she entered. "I didn't have much choice," I replied. "I just hope everything goes smoothly." "The kids will enjoy themselves," she reassured. "Did Sophie tell you Linda won't be here?" I asked. "Yes, she did," Rhonda confirmed. "I can't believe Linda would miss her daughter's birthday." She gave me a curious look. "Is everything all right between you two?" I ushered the kids upstairs to prepare for the party before addressing Rhonda and her husband George. "No, it's not," I admitted. "I hate to break it to you, but I'm divorcing Linda." "What?" exclaimed George. "Why?" "She's been having an affair with her boss for 12 years, I revealed. "That's where she is now." "Oh my God!" gasped Rhonda. "Are you sure?" "I am. I hired an investigator," I explained, offering to show them the report, which Rhonda declined. "I'd like to see that report," George interjected. "While you're doing that, I'll finish preparing for Sophie's party," Rhonda decided. I thanked Rhonda and led George to my home office, handing him the report. He shook his head in disbelief after reading about Linda's involvement with Grant. "That idiot," he muttered, handing back the report. "Sorry, John. It's hard to accept." "I understand," I sympathized. "What about Grant?" George asked. "I've sued him and his sister for emotional distress," I explained. He scoffed. "Just a lawsuit?" He scoffed. "After what he did?" "I get it, George," I acknowledged. "But I can't risk jail time with 2 kids." "True," he conceded. "But Grant needs to be dealt with." "I can't let you get in trouble," I insisted. "Don't worry, I won't land in jail," he assured. George was tough, and his plan was his own. "What's the plan?" I asked. "Better you don't know," he said with a grin. "Okay," I agreed. He clapped my shoulder. "Let's enjoy time with the kids," he suggested. Outside, Rhonda had set up for the party. Sophie was amazed by the decorations. "Thank you, Daddy," she said, embracing me. "This is so wonderful. I wish Mom were here to see this." "I do too," I replied. "We can take pictures for her to see later, okay?" "Okay," she agreed. I fired up the grill and started cooking hamburgers and hot dogs for everyone. Around 4:30 p.m., the doorbell rang, signaling the beginning. Over the next half hour, more than a dozen parents arrived with their children. All of them were Sophie's school friends, and they were all enjoying themselves in the backyard. Among the last to arrive were Natalie and her husband Ralph, with their daughter, Denise. I welcomed them inside and directed Denise to join the party in the backyard. I offered Natalie and Ralph something to drink, and they graciously accepted. "I'm surprised to see you here, Natalie. I thought you and Ralph had an important business trip this weekend," I remarked. "That's Grant and Linda's responsibility," she clarified. "I'm just there to support them in the office." "I see," I responded. "John, is everything okay?" Natalie inquired. "Between you and Linda, I mean." "Why do you ask?" I countered. "You're not wearing your wedding ring," she pointed out. I glanced at my finger and noticed the indentation where my ring used to be. "I returned it to her," I explained. "Maybe Grant will have better luck keeping her faithful than I did." "What do you mean by that?" Natalie pressed. "Let's not play games, Natalie," I retorted. "I know your brother's been involved with Linda for the past 12 years. I'll admit, you both did a good job of deceiving me all this time." "John, please, Linda still loves you," Natalie pleaded. "Yes, so much that she lied and betrayed me for over a decade. I can't even begin to describe how loved I feel right now," I said sarcastically. "So what's your plan?" Natalie asked. "What do you think? I'm divorcing her. She and Grant will be served soon," I stated, checking my watch. "Served?" Natalie questioned. "Yes, Linda will receive divorce papers and I'm suing Grant. You'll be served on Monday," I informed her. "Me? Why are you suing me? I haven't done anything," Natalie protested. "Exactly," I said. "For over a decade you knew about their affair. My investigator even suggested you might have facilitated it. And all the while you pretended to be my friend. You could have said or done something, but you didn't. How many times have you sat in my house, enjoyed my hospitality, knowing what Linda was doing with your brother? Did you find it amusing to make me a fool? Now my marriage and my family are shattered, and you're partly responsible for that. Thanks to the three of you, I'll never be able to love or trust another woman again, and my children have lost their mother. I hope you're satisfied. John, I'm truly sorry, she said. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough, Natalie, I asserted. For 12 years, the three of you conspired to ruin my family. You didn't care about the impact on me or my children, and now you've succeeded. It wasn't like that, Natalie insisted. Really? Was it all just business between the three of you? I scoffed. At first, yes, she admitted. It was Grant's idea initially. Linda went along with it because she wanted the job, but she wasn't happy about it. Over time, things changed. And what about after you sold your company and supposedly retired? I questioned. That was Linda's decision, Natalie clarified. I thought it would end, but Linda chose to continue the affair. Then she made a terrible choice, I remarked. But you still played a part. I'm truly sorry, John, she said. None of us wanted to hurt you. But you did, I concluded, in the worst possible way. It's best if you gather your family and leave my house, Natalie. She nodded silently. I understand, John, she whispered, before departing to fetch Denise and Ralph. And Natalie, I called after her. She turned to face me. Don't ever come back. She wiped away a tear and left with Denise and Ralph. Linda and Grant were lying undressed in his bed when her phone buzzed, signaling a new message. Assuming it was John sending pictures from Sophie's party, she reached for her phone on the nightstand and read the text from Natalie. He knows everything. Oh no, she exclaimed. What's wrong? Grant inquired. That was Natalie. She said John knows everything, Linda disclosed. I should get cleaned up and go home. Are you sure that's wise? Grant questioned. Yes, Linda affirmed. She hastily put on a bathrobe and got out of bed. Just then, they heard the doorbell. Who could that be? Grant wondered aloud. He hastily dressed and went downstairs, with Linda following close behind. Opening the door, he found a man standing there. How can I help you? Grant asked. Are you Grant Jacobs? The man queried. Yes, Grant replied. And is Linda Walker also present? The man continued. That's me, Linda interjected, stepping forward. I'll need to see some identification, the man requested. Why? Grant queried as he retrieved his wallet. The man silently examined Grant's license before handing him an envelope. You've been served, the man declared. Miss Walker, I'll need to see your identification as well. Sure, Linda complied, retrieving her wallet. After inspecting her license, the man handed her an envelope. You've been served, he stated. Additionally, there's a restraining order included with these documents. You are both prohibited from approaching Mr. John Walker, his residence, his workplace, and his children, including their school, within a 500-foot radius. Failure to comply could result in arrest. Good day. With that, the man left, leaving Linda and Grant stunned. Excuse me, is Linda Walker here? Another man, dressed casually, inquired. Yes, that's me, Linda confirmed. The man handed her a paper bag with an envelope attached, and she accepted it, puzzled. I was instructed to deliver this to you personally, ma'am. I also have several other boxes, the man explained. Where should I put them? Grant and Linda exchanged glances before Grant responded. Just leave them in the front room for now, he instructed. Thank you, sir, the man acknowledged before heading back to the truck. As they watched, several boxes were brought in and stacked in the front room as directed by Grant. While this was happening, Linda opened the envelope. Inside was a man's wedding ring, a note, and her marriage license, torn into 4 pieces. Tears streamed down her face as she read the note. Linda, the typewritten note began, throughout our marriage, I have only loved and supported you. Imagine my shock upon discovering your affair with Grant Jacobs over the past 12 years. This is how you repay my love, with deceit and infidelity. All this time you claimed it was just business, but I now know it was much more than that. I hope it was worth it. I urge you to seek legal counsel promptly. Our finances have been divided per the divorce papers, and I have changed the locks on our doors. As I have been the primary caregiver for our children since your involvement with Grant began, I am seeking full custody. However, I am open to visitation arrangements. Please have your attorney contact mine to coordinate. Furthermore, as Grant has offered you shelter, I have sent your belongings to his residence. If there are any items you wish to retrieve from our home, please have your attorney contact mine to arrange it. I have no desire for further contact with you. Please refrain from reaching out to our children or me, or I will enforce the restraining order. I implore you not to contest the divorce terms. I do not wish to escalate matters for the sake of our children, but I will if necessary. I possess photographic evidence, videos, and a comprehensive investigator's report documenting your recent activities. I have not yet disclosed the reason for our divorce to the children, but I will when the time is appropriate. Your parents are aware of the situation, though they have not seen the evidence. Please do what is right for once and bring an end to this charade of a marriage. As of now, Linda, you are dead to me. Goodbye. Signed, John. Overcome with emotion, Linda opened the paper bag and found the ashes of her wedding gown. The very gown she wore when she married John. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Grant wrapped his arms around her and read the letter. "He's such an idiot," he muttered. "I'll give him a piece of my mind." "No, Grant, please don't. I don't want you to end up in jail. This is my mess to clean up," she replied. "What did you find out?" "He's suing me for causing him emotional distress," Grant revealed. "He's demanding $5 million. I'll contact my lawyer and see what options we have." "I wonder if he's going after Natalie too," Linda pondered. "Let's check," Grant suggested, reaching for his phone. "If he is, we should meet to discuss this and try to minimize the damage." After the birthday party wrapped up, I expressed gratitude to everyone for attending and for the thoughtful gifts. As I surveyed the cluttered house, I knew I had my work cut out for me. Sophie approached me with tears in her eyes. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, embracing her. "I wish Mom could have been here," she sniffled. "I missed her." "Yeah, me too," I acknowledged. "Unfortunately, your mother had other plans." Sophie looked at me with a mix of sadness and curiosity. "Are you divorcing her?" she inquired tearfully. I didn't want to spoil her day, but I knew I couldn't evade the conversation forever. "We'll discuss that later, okay?" "It's because of that Grant guy, right?" Aaron chimed in. "What makes you say that?" I questioned. "I've overheard Mom talking to him on the phone a few times," he explained. It was intriguing, but I decided not to probe further, at least for now. "We'll talk more tomorrow," I asserted. "Today is Sophie's birthday. Right now, I need your help cleaning up, all right?" "Okay, Dad," Aaron complied. I hugged Sophie once more and kissed her on the cheek. "Everything will be okay," I assured her, wiping away her tears. "I love you." "I love you too, Daddy," she reciprocated. Rhonda and George stayed behind to assist with the cleanup. "Are you going to be all right, John?" Rhonda inquired before they departed. "I'll manage," I replied. "Thanks for pitching in." "Of course," she responded. "If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to ask." "I appreciate it," I expressed. Rhonda embraced me, and George shook my hand. "Take care, son," he bid me farewell. After they drove off, exhausted, I retreated upstairs and fell asleep almost instantly. The following day, I rose early and completed my usual Sunday tasks after preparing breakfast for us. While I mowed the lawn, Aaron handled the edging. Once we finished, we tidied up and put away the equipment. After lunch, I was surprised to find Sophie making sandwiches for us. We dined together at the table before clearing our plates. Sophie regarded me seriously as we finished. "All right, Dad," she began. "You need to tell us what's going on." I dreaded this conversation, but it was inevitable. I gathered the kids in the living room and we all took a seat. "There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just be straightforward," I began. "I'm divorcing your mother." The news was met with silence from the kids, no outbursts as I had anticipated. They seemed to take it in stride. "She's been cheating on you with that Grant guy, hasn't she?" Aaron ventured. "Yeah," I admitted quietly, nodding. "I figured as much," Aaron remarked. "I bet it's been happening for a while, huh?" "What makes you think that?" I asked. "Just the way she talks to him," he explained. "I've heard her on the phone. She talks to him the same way she talks to you, Dad." It was a revelation. Why hadn't I noticed that myself? The answer was clear. Until recently, I trusted her implicitly and respected her privacy. I saw no reason to eavesdrop on her conversations with Grant or anyone else. "So, how long has it been going on, Dad?" Sophie inquired. "As far as I can figure, it's been about 12 years, sweetheart," I replied. She reacted with a gasp. "So that means she started not long after I was born," she remarked. "Pretty much," I confirmed. "Damn her," Sophie muttered. "Sorry, Dad," she quickly added, sensing my reaction. Understanding her frustration, I let it slide this time. "Can I stay with you?" she asked. "Absolutely, if that's what you want," I assured her. "Me too, Dad," Aaron chimed in. "You've always been there for us." "Thank you, guys. That means the world to me," I expressed. "Actually, I've requested custody of you both," I revealed. I opened my arms and they both enveloped me in a hug. We shared a heartfelt embrace, and I felt overwhelmed with joy that my children wanted to remain with me. After our tearful moment, we continued with the rest of the day, although there was an underlying sadness in the air. The following days passed without incident. George and Rhonda agreed to pick up the kids after school and stayed with us until I returned from work. I felt bad about inconveniencing them, but they were understanding and gladly lent a hand. Rhonda even prepared our dinner, which was a tremendous help. On Tuesday, I received a call from my attorney, Lisa. Linda had consulted with her own lawyer and expressed a desire to visit the children. I was apprehensive about having her at the house and feared she might do something rash, like taking off with them. "What about the restraining order?" I inquired. "If you agree, we could temporarily suspend it for a designated period, say from 9 p.m. Friday to 9 a.m. Sunday, Lisa proposed. "I know it's difficult, but appearing reasonable is crucial." "I understand. What if she visits the kids at her parents' house on Saturday?" I suggested. "I can drop them off there on Friday after school and pick them up either Saturday night or Sunday." "I'll propose that and see how her lawyer responds," Lisa agreed. "Under no circumstances should Grant or Natalie be present," I emphasized. "And there's a chance the kids might not want to see her. They're not exactly thrilled with her right now." "I'll convey that," Lisa assured me. "Anything else?" I inquired. "Yes. Her lawyer wants access to the full PI report," Lisa informed me. "I've compiled a copy and sent it over. She should receive it by Thursday at the latest." "So she's retained legal counsel?" I confirmed. "Yes, she hired Beth Sawyer on Monday," Lisa confirmed. "It's surprising since Beth detests cheaters almost as much as I do. I suspect it's because she works in the same firm as Grant's attorney. Regardless, I'll discuss it with Beth and keep you updated." The next day, Lisa informed me that Linda and her lawyer had agreed to my terms, provided I suspended the restraining order for 36 hours, from midnight Saturday to noon Sunday, and it only applied to Linda, not Grant or Natalie. They also agreed that Linda would visit with the children at her parents' house and refrain from taking them anywhere. If the kids were comfortable with the arrangement, Linda would spend the night there with them. Reluctantly, I accepted these terms, not wanting to appear unreasonable to the court. Initially, the children were hesitant, but I managed to convince them to give it a chance. George and Rhonda agreed to pick them up after school on Friday and return them to the house on Sunday afternoon after their visit. I had reservations, but I trusted George and Rhonda. George even suggested taking me to a bar to catch some sports over a beer on Saturday night. On Friday morning, I ensured the children had all they needed for the weekend. After hugging and kissing them, I drove them to school, reminding them to contact me if Grant, Natalie, or their mother tried to approach them. Only after confirming they were safely inside the building did I head to work. The following evening around 5:30, George picked me up and we headed to the Flatstick Pub, a bustling sports bar downtown. Over burgers and beers, we caught up while watching the action on the numerous screens. "Linda showed up around 9 o'clock this morning," George informed me. "It was tense initially, but things eased up a bit. The kids aren't thrilled with her and made it clear. Surprisingly, she came clean." "That's unexpected," I remarked. "She claims she still loves you. Seems like she might aim for reconciliation," George said. "Is that something you'd consider?" "I'm afraid not, George," I replied. "After 12 years of deception, it's hard to see past that." "I understand. Did you really burn her wedding dress? That gown set me back over $2,000 when you two got married," George recalled. "It felt appropriate at the time," I admitted. "She mentioned her lawyer thoroughly reviewed the PI report and gave her a stern talking to," George added. "I think she's starting to grasp your perspective." "Too little, too late," I stated. George nodded, taking a sip of his beer. Suddenly, we heard a commotion behind me. Before I could react, something struck my head and I saw stars. As I fell, I managed to dodge a subsequent blow aimed at me. "I'm going to eliminate you, you idiot," Grant's voice rang out. Seeing him looming over me, I instinctively retaliated, recalling self-defense lessons from my father. I landed a fierce kick to Grant's groin as he advanced, causing him to collapse. Seizing the opportunity, I delivered several blows to his face in rapid succession. It wasn't a calculated attack with finesse. It was raw fury, and a desire to retaliate against the man who shattered my marriage and family happiness. Unaware that Grant was already unconscious, I relentlessly struck him until 2 pairs of hands pulled me away. As I came to, I found myself in a hospital bed being examined by a doctor. My right hand was bandaged, and my left hand and forearm were in a cast. A throbbing headache plagued me. "He'll be all right," the doctor assured George. "While he'll have a headache for some time, there's no sign of a concussion. We'll administer pain relief and let him rest before discharge." "Thank you, doctor," George responded. Turning to me, he relayed the doctor's assessment. "You'll pull through. Although you're hurting, Grant came out worse. Heard he's losing a testicle, lost teeth, and nearly lost an eye. You apparently landed a solid punch on his jaw. Was that him?" "Yeah," I croaked. "How long have I been here?" "Since last night. It's now 8:30 on Sunday morning," George informed me. "Oh, and there are a couple of officers outside who want to speak with you. Ready for that?" "I might as well get it over with," I replied. George signaled the officers who entered the room. "I'm Sergeant Smith, and this is Officer Jones. We responded to your altercation at the Flatstick Pub last night." Smith introduced himself. "How are you feeling this morning, sir?" "I feel like I've been punched upside the head," I expressed to him. Smith smiled and checked his notes. "What happened last night?" he inquired. "I don't have much to share," I replied. "I was having a burger and beer with my father-in-law here. Then, suddenly, I got struck in the head. The guy threatened my life, so I defended myself." Smith nodded. "That aligns with what the witnesses reported," Smith confirmed, referring to his notes. "The surveillance footage supports your account. Do you know the assailant?" "Yes, Sergeant. His name is Grant Jacobs. I have a lawsuit against him, and he's part of my divorce proceedings," I disclosed. "Divorce?" the sergeant echoed. "Yes," I affirmed. "Got it," he jotted down in his notebook. "I assume you want to press charges." "Yes, absolutely," I asserted. "There's also a restraining order against him." "Understood," he acknowledged. "We'll look into that. We'll handle it from here, Mr. Walker. You may be approached for further questioning, so please refrain from leaving town for a while." "No problem, Sergeant," I assured him, raising my hands. He smiled and left the room with his colleague. After they departed, Rhonda, Linda, and the kids entered. "Why is she here?" I questioned, glancing at Linda. "My restraining order doesn't take effect until noon," Linda explained. "I assumed you'd be with your boyfriend," I remarked. She looked down, embarrassed. "I wanted to see you first," she admitted. "Besides, Natalie's with him and he's still recovering." I nodded, and the kids gathered around me. Sophie's eyes were watery. "Are you going to be okay, Daddy?" she asked. "I'll be all right, sweetheart," I reassured her. "I heard you really gave it to Grant last night," Aaron said with a grin. "That's the word on the street," I said, looking at George, "but it's not something to boast about. You hear me?" "Got it, Dad," Aaron replied. "Are you going to be okay, John?" Linda inquired. "He'll be fine," Sophie assured her mother. "We'll take care of him, won't we, Aaron?" "Yeah, we got this," my son affirmed. Linda glanced at our teenage children before speaking. "If you guys don't mind, I'd like to have a private chat with your father for a few minutes," she requested. They hesitated before agreeing. "Sure," Sophie said, "but we'll be just outside the door. Come on, Aaron," she added, reaching for her brother. They exited, followed by George and Rhonda. "John," Linda began after they left, "I can't express how sorry I am about everything." "Well, as I told Natalie last Saturday, sorry doesn't even scratch the surface," I stated. "You deceived and betrayed me for what, 12 years? And you think sorry is enough to make it all better? Was I that inadequate as a husband to you? All I ever did was love and support you. I don't understand." "You are the best husband and father anyone could wish for," she replied sadly. "But even that wasn't sufficient for you, was it?" I questioned. "It's not like that," she defended. "Really, that's what it seems like to me," I countered. "You don't comprehend," she insisted. "Then help me understand," I urged. "At first it was merely a means to secure my job," she confessed. "Grant indicated that having lovemaking with me was a condition for obtaining the position." "That's exploitation," I pointed out. "That's illegal. Why didn't you come to me first? We could have taken action." "Oh, I see. You were desperate for that job. So much so that you thought sleeping with Grant was a small price to pay, even if it tore apart our family." "I essentially made a pact with the devil," she admitted. "So now you're shifting blame to the devil?" I scoffed. "Give me a break." The truth is, you wanted that job so badly that you were willing to sleep with him for it, even if it cost you everything. What happened to it's just business? Tell me, Linda, where does the destruction of our family fit into your profit and loss statement? Huh? I'd like to know why you continued even after supposedly retiring. That was my fault, she admitted. I suppose I reached a point where I believed I could have the best of both worlds. You developed feelings for him, didn't you? That's why you persisted. How long did you plan to continue? Indefinitely? Did you truly believe I'd never discover the truth? Or did you expect me to simply acquiesce once I did? And remember, I'm aware of far more than you realize, I countered. Yes, I grew attached to him, she confessed. It became difficult not to after all those years. I assumed your love for me would allow me this indulgence. I tried my best to keep it from detracting anything from our relationship. Are you serious? I questioned, incredulous. Every moment you spent with him detracted from us. Surely you grasped the concept of opportunity cost, the forfeit of potential benefit from other options when one is chosen. You chose him over your family. Consequently, you forfeited your family. But I still love you, she insisted. My love for you never waned. But you lost respect for me, I pointed out. She appeared shocked. No, that's not true, she denied. Yes, you did, I asserted. That's why you promised him you'd continue sleeping with him indefinitely and discussed threatening to accuse me of maltreatment in a divorce. Her eyes widened. You heard that? She gasped. Yes, and more, I confirmed. For instance, you told Grant you'd prefer spending time with him over our daughter on her birthday. What kind of mother does that? What message do you think that sends to an impressionable teenager? Did you consider her feelings or Aaron's when you missed his birthday last year? She flinched at that. I suppose I failed as a wife and mother, she murmured. Your words, not mine. But if they resonate with you, I said, shrugging. By the way, I can assure your lover he won't be pursued for child support. Yes, I had DNA tests conducted, and the children are mine. She looked at me stunned. Oh my God. You thought I'd do that to you? She exclaimed. Well, you deceived me for 12 years, I reminded her. You schemed and misled me all that time, concealing your affair. What would you expect? You might also find comfort in knowing I haven't contracted anything from either of you. You may not be aware, but Grant enjoys playing the field. You're not his only conquest. I suspected, but I wasn't certain. What should I do now? She inquired. Sign the divorce papers, Linda. Put an end to this charade of a marriage. Then seek help and get your life in order. For the children's sake, I advised. I suspect you'll have ample time. I imagine Grant will be detained by the state for some time. You're probably right, she conceded. Okay, I'll sign the papers. I'm sorry, John, for everything. You've said that, I reminded her. I suppose I have, haven't I? Well, thank you for allowing me time with the kids this weekend, she acknowledged. You're welcome, I replied. I know you don't believe me, but I truly love you, she insisted. And I wish you could find it in your heart for us to reconcile. You're correct. I don't believe you. But I appreciate you saying so, I admitted. I suppose a small part of me will always care for you too. But it's insufficient. I need to be able to trust my partner. And after what you've done, I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone again. She nodded as tears streamed down her face. I get it, she murmured. Goodbye, John. She leaned in and planted a kiss on my cheek. Goodbye, Linda, I responded. She turned and exited the room, tears streaming down her face. George, Rhonda, and the kids entered after her departure. Everything okay, son? George inquired. Yeah, I assured him. We had a talk. I think she finally realizes the extent of her mistakes. Does that mean you and Mom are reconciling? Sophie asked. I shook my head. No, sweetheart, I clarified. But you both love each other, she reasoned. Love alone isn't always enough to sustain a marriage, Sophie, I explained. Trust is equally important, and right now, I don't trust her. You'll understand this someday. The doctor conducted one final check and discharged me. George drove me home with the kids. Update. Later that night, I received a frantic call from George and Linda. Natalie informed them that Linda attempted self-destruction by overdosing on sleeping pills and hard drinks. Natalie discovered her unconscious at Grant's residence while retrieving some of his belongings. A note on Linda's nightstand simply read, I'm sorry. Though she nearly succumbed to the overdose, Linda survived and spent a couple of days in the hospital. Following evaluation by mental health professionals, she was released into George and Rhonda's care, eventually relocating back in with them. Linda signed the divorce papers without contesting. Lisa informed me that I'd be legally single in 90 days. Free. Yeah, right. Grant and Natalie's attorney swiftly settled with us for half of my initial claim. Consequently, I received approximately $3.5 million after legal fees. I allocated $1 million for each child's college fund and saved the remainder. I began planning a Mediterranean cruise for the kids during their next summer vacation. Grant received a 10-year prison sentence for aggravated assault, battery, and attempted homicide based on video evidence from the attack. He'd be eligible for parole in about 8.5 years. I saw Linda during visits to George and Rhonda's home. Sometimes we'd chat briefly, but I couldn't overlook her actions. She sought counseling to understand her motives, clinging to the hope of reconciliation. I was pleased she sought help, but it felt like closing the stable door after the horses bolted. Over time, she rebuilt a relationship with the kids, which I welcomed. George mentioned she focused on writing for business blogs and refrained from dating. She expressed sadness upon learning of the cruise without her, but managed to cope, wishing us well. The kids frequently sent her text updates with photos from our travels. I met a charming woman, Nikki, from British Columbia, also on a post-divorce cruise. She was slightly younger than Linda, had shoulder-length blonde hair, and a bubbly demeanor. I enjoyed her habit of ending sentences with "eh?" She had 2 children spending the summer with grandparents in Idaho, similar in age to mine. We shared stories about our pasts and occasionally shared a bed. Sophie teased me, singing "Daddy's Got a Girlfriend" while nudging me. We exchanged contact details at the cruise's end, promising to keep in touch via email and Skype. Though uncertain of what the future held, we spoke online at least twice weekly. We adjusted to life without Linda. My employer accommodated my schedule for school runs. I knew Aaron would eventually take over driving duties once he was old enough. Shortly after our return, George visited with some unfortunate news. "They're planning to admit Linda to a mental hospital," he informed me. "Oh, why?" I inquired. "Sophie sent her a photo of you 3 having dinner with that Canadian woman you met on your cruise," he explained. I don't think Sophie meant any damage, but Linda didn't react well. She had a breakdown. Rhonda and I discovered her in the bathtub. She had cut her wrists. "Oh my God!" I gasped. "I'm sorry to hear that." I genuinely felt regretful upon learning about her self-destruction attempt, yet part of me felt a sense of validation. Now she understood a fraction of the pain I experienced when I first discovered her affair with Grant. "Yeah, me too. Thankfully, she botched it and survived. But given her history, the doctors concluded she requires constant care and supervision," George shared. "Rhonda and I are getting too old to watch over her around the clock. Thus, they decided to institutionalize her." "For how long?" I inquired. "It's uncertain, son," he responded. "It could be a few years. It could be indefinite. I just don't know." "Keep me updated if there's anything we can do," I offered. "Thank you, son. I appreciate it," he replied. Nikki and I sustained our long-distance relationship, and I found that our frequent conversations deepened our connection. I also caught myself daydreaming about her, a lot. She expressed sorrow upon hearing about Linda, primarily for George, Rhonda, and the children, but she echoed my sentiments. During our last conversation, she suggested visiting us with her kids, or proposed I bring my children to her home, a 2-story log house situated on 50 wooded acres north of Kamloops, built in the late 1800s, she mentioned. Having never ventured north of the U.S. border, I found the idea intriguing. Who knows what, if anything, will transpire. In any case, that's a tale for another time.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Today we bring a story of a cheating wife who gets caught after exposing herself and how her husband quickly puts her where she belongs, and yes, he did not spare the AP and dealt with him like a man. I'm a 34-year-old male, and I've been married to my wife Linda, a 36-year-old homemaker, for 5 years. Recently, I was on a work trip and decided to surprise Linda by coming home early on a Sunday night instead of Monday afternoon. As I was driving home, I received a shocking text from Linda. She expressed how much she enjoyed the week and mentioned doing it again the next time her husband, meaning me, travels for work. She went on to say she missed waking up to someone else and how much she'd miss having sex every day. I couldn't believe what I was reading, so I pulled over into a parking lot to reread the message. After confirming it wasn't a hallucination, I replied with a simple, get a lawyer. Due to our prenup, I assumed she would be okay with one lawyer mediating our divorce. I threw my phone on the seat and continued home, ignoring her attempts to call and text. When I arrived home, she was on the phone with a male voice, and I overheard her explaining the situation. Unbeknownst to her, I walked in and casually said, "Honey, I'm home." The look on her face was priceless. She dropped her phone in horror, and I asked, "Are you talking to the lawyer?" Ignoring her pleas that it was all a joke, I went to the bedroom, stripped the linen off the bed, and started packing it into black plastic bags. Linda was in tears, insisting it was a prank, but I didn't buy it. The betrayal was too much to bear, and I needed to take steps to move forward. In the end, I needed 2 bags because the comforter wouldn't fit with the sheets and blanket. I just ignored her, walked out to my car, and threw the 2 bags into the trunk. I was assuming those were the linens that she used to be with the guy over the last week, so there was most likely evidence of sex in case I needed it for proof. I didn't need it, and I don't think Linda made the connection. When I got back into the house, Linda threw herself at me, begging me to talk to her. She kept saying that it was a joke. I told her it was a very bad one, and then told her I would talk to her when we consult a lawyer and not before. I then told her you have one chance to come clean. I have the bed sheets sent to a lab for fluid stains, so the truth will come out and I will wreck you in court. She did not say a lot, just nodded in a yes. Who is he? I screamed. It was Richard. I was shocked. He is my friend. Was my friend? The room fell silent. I broke the silence and asked her if she had a place to stay, and she looked at me confused. I told her, "You will not be staying in my house. Pack your bags and go stay with your parents. You won't be living here again. I'll have your personal belongings packed and delivered to you." She dropped to the ground, just bawling, saying the no chant and that she loved me and it didn't mean anything, etc. I had to force the issue with her by telling her she could do the packing and leave, or I could drag her and her crap out into the yard. This was my family's house before we got married, passed to me when my parents decided to move to a condo in a warm weather locale. My parents still owned it, but I would inherit it when they passed. Linda had no rights to the house. Just to make sure I was within my rights, I called my dad and gave him a rundown of what had happened. After all, he was done swearing. He asked how to help. I told him I needed him to text my wife. He has her number, and tell her that she was to vacate the home. Of course, she could probably have dug in and made us go through an eviction, but that wouldn't have been smart for her, and she knew it. Linda packed her bags and went into the garage. She started digging around for the key to her car and couldn't find it because I had taken it from her purse while packing. The problem with Linda is that she's lazy. When we went car shopping, she never wanted to go through the hassle of sitting with me to do the actual paperwork. That meant both of our cars were in my name. Considering the cheating, I didn't feel the need to allow her to take one of them. To top it off, both car payments were coming from my personal bank account. So, I told her to her face that both cars were in my name, and she could call her parents or get an Uber. She was still freaking out and started yelling at me for being mean. I got right down into her face with mine, and with my voice shaking, I told her that she didn't want to push her luck with me. She backed off, and I held out my hand, saying, "Phone." She looked even more shocked and said no. I asked her who purchased the phone because I knew I could prove I did. It was on my credit card. I told her she could have the old phone in the drawer and get her own line since I was, yet again, the only one on the T-Mobile contract. She reluctantly handed over the phone and got the old one out of the drawer. I would later find all kinds of info regarding the affair because, as I said, Linda is lazy and always uses one of 3 passwords. In this case, it was the 4 digits of her birth year. I escorted her out and stood there blocking the door until her mom and dad showed up. When they got out of the car, Linda was in tears again and ran to her mom. Her dad walked up to me with a stern face and asked what was going on. I pulled out my phone and showed him the text message she sent me. His face was ashen after reading it, and he nodded, saying he was sorry. They left, and once Linda's stuff was loaded, that was the last time I spoke to my now ex-wife. It wasn't until later that week that we met at the lawyer's office for mediation. This was my second marriage, and after the nightmare of the first one, I had told Linda early on when we were dating that I'd never marry again without having a prenup. She seemed non-committal but didn't object since it was fair. We simply divided bank assets evenly, and each person would be responsible for their own credit cards and debt in their name. We had no shared cards, and I had the bulk of the debt on mine since Linda only used hers for going out with friends and Starbucks, etc. The prenup also stated that there would be no alimony or access to the other's retirement for any reason in case of a divorce. I'm simplifying this, as the document itself was multiple pages. The lawyer we hired as a mediator took into account all of our purchased assets and weighed them. The prenup meant Linda ended up with exactly half of our banking funds, including savings. She got to keep anything purchased on her credit card, but that wasn't much, as all major purchases were done on my card, including most of her jewelry. I didn't contest her keeping that because I wouldn't know what to do with it. I also allowed her to keep any furniture she wanted. Every time Linda tried to talk to me, I shut her down. There was no coming back from this. She didn't cheat once as a lapse in judgment. She was having a full-blown affair. I was lucky that Linda had too much scar tissue in her uterus to bring a child to term, so we never had kids. The doctor said this could have been from an abortion she had in high school. She had quite a few miscarriages over the first couple of years, but we stopped trying because of the mental train wreck that caused. Our divorce was quick and without any drama due to the prenup and the mediator. It took 6 months, with most of that time being part of a mandatory waiting period. I am by no means a Hollywood heartthrob, but I'm in reasonable shape since I'm still in my 30s and eat well. My wife was pretty in the face, but she was going soft due to her laziness. Although she was soft, I found that attractive, and apparently, her affair partner did too. So, I'm sure she'll be able to find someone else. I never heard of what happened to the affair partner or any real info on him. Linda said they stopped seeing each other because he had heard her screaming about how it was a mistake and how much she loved me after she dropped the phone. I'm guessing that she was telling him something different, and he opted out. Did I forgive Richard? No, once my divorce was over. I met him at his home. I told him that I have divorced the 304 that you were screwing. It's time for you to have what is coming for you. I told him that it was one thing that my wife cheated on me, but a friend stabbing you in the back is not something I'll let go easily. I had 6 months to be ready for this confrontation. I have lost love before and did not do anything. This time I was prepared for this. He was screaming at me that I broke his relationship with Linda, tried to lunge at me. I cracked him with a punch to his nose. I got on top of him and kept hitting him. My tears flew down with every punch I threw. Months of frustration and anger. I let it all flow through me. I kept beating him till he did not lose consciousness. I sat beside his limp body for a few minutes and then called 911. The paramedics arrived and took him to the hospital. I was arrested and was taken to the police station. To my surprise, in the evening I was let go. Apparently, Richard had not filed any charges against me. I got a message the next day from Richard. It just said, "We are even." That's my story. At the end of the day, I probably sounded like I didn't care or love Linda, but I did. It hurt me a lot to go through this, but unfortunately, I had walked the divorce road in my early 20s. Strike two, I guess. Not planning to get a third one anytime soon. Wishing all of you living with this crap the best. Remember to call your prenup an equitable marriage contract since it doesn't have the same stigma. The lawyer said they are way more common now than people think. Now for the second story. My wife cheated with the arcade mascot at our son's birthday party. You never truly appreciate the word normalcy until life throws you into the deep end of absurdity, as I learned on that fateful day. Even a child's pirate-themed birthday party can serve as the stage for such oddities. It was the day I saw my wife, Jennifer, a woman I believe to be my soulmate, in the unfaithful embrace of a pirate mascot at our son's birthday party. Our son David was absolutely enamored with the local pirate-themed arcade, Pirates Plunder, and he had only one request for his 6th birthday, a Pirates Plunder party. Jennifer and I were more than happy to oblige. The venue was fantastic, with a sprawling arcade floor, themed party rooms, and 2 mascots, a pirate named Captain Cutlass and a friendly shark named Scallywag. They were hits among the kids, especially David. The day of the party was bright, sunny, and filled with anticipation. Jennifer had really gone all out, making sure everything was ship-shaped, pirate-themed invitations, skull and crossbones balloons, even a treasure chest cake. The children were thrilled, laughter and merriment filling the air as kids ran around, earning tickets and competing for the highest scores on the arcade machines. David was having the time of his life, and Jennifer seemed to be in high spirits too. Her eyes sparkled as she watched our son enjoying himself, her laughter mingling with the children's. The moment should have been perfect until I noticed something odd. Captain Cutlass, in all his oversized, overstuffed glory, was paying more attention to Jennifer than the kids. She was laughing at his jokes, posing for pictures, and even partaking in some playful banter. I shrugged it off initially, attributing it to the festivities' infectious energy. But as time passed, their interactions seemed less innocent. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was imagining things, until I saw them sneak off into a door labeled Employees Only. My heart pounded in my chest as I quietly made my way towards the door, careful not to attract any attention. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open only to find Jennifer and Captain Cutlass in a passionate embrace. A rush of shock, anger, and disbelief washed over me. The image was forever imprinted in my mind. Jennifer in the arms of the pirate mascot. I roared, charging at Captain Cutlass. My fist connected with the mascot's oversized padded head, knocking him into a stack of cardboard boxes. My wife, Jennifer, gasped, her face turning pale as she realized she'd been caught. "Chris," she started, but I was in no mood to listen. I grabbed her arm and practically dragged her out of the back room, ignoring her pleas for me to calm down. I was seeing red, my heart pounding a ferocious rhythm in my chest. Re-entering the party, we plastered fake smiles on our faces, refusing to let our personal drama overshadow our son's big day. We cut the cake, sang, and laughed, but it was all a bitter performance. Once the party ended and we'd packed everything into the car, the silence was deafening. We didn't speak until we were back home, David tucked into bed with his face smeared with the remnants of his birthday cake. Jennifer tried to explain, to justify, but her words fell on deaf ears. I felt a cold fury burning inside me. Every word she spoke was a reminder of her betrayal. "It was a stupid mistake," she said, tears streaming down her face. "A mistake, Jennifer? You don't just accidentally cheat on your husband with a goddamn pirate mascot." I snapped. My voice echoed through the silent house, mirroring the hollow ache in my chest. "I don't know what I was thinking." "I'm sorry," she whispered, her eyes pleading for forgiveness. I wanted to believe her, to take her in my arms and forget everything, but the image of her with Captain Cutlass kept replaying in my mind. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Jennifer," I said, my voice flat. "You broke us. You broke our family." "I messed up, Chris," she sobbed. "I know I messed up. Please, let's talk about this for David." But I was past the point of discussion. The woman I loved, the mother of my son, had betrayed our marriage, our family. I didn't trust myself to make any decisions in the heat of the moment, but one thing was clear. I needed space. "We'll talk tomorrow, Jennifer," I said, a sense of finality in my voice. "Tonight, I'm sleeping in the guest room." Jennifer nodded, tears still streaming down her face. I left her in the living room, her sobs echoing behind me, a haunting reminder of the day's events. That night, as I lay in the guest bed, my mind turned into a whirlpool of confusion and anger. Sleep was a distant dream. I replayed the day's events over and over. The sight of Jennifer in the mascot's arms, the feeling of betrayal. I knew what I needed to do, though it pained me to even think it. The next morning, I found Jennifer in the kitchen, her eyes red and puffy from crying. David was still asleep, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between his parents. The air was thick with tension as I took a deep breath and said the words I never thought I'd utter. "Jennifer, I want a divorce." The words hung in the air like a guillotine, heavy and irreversible. Jennifer's eyes widened, and for a moment, all was silent. Then a sob broke the silence, a mournful sound that echoed the breaking of our once happy home. Life, as it seems, is full of surprises, and sometimes those surprises come in the form of pirate mascots at a child's birthday party. As I embarked on this new uncharted course, I couldn't help but think of the innocence and joy that had kicked off the day before. A child's birthday party turned into the catalyst for a life-altering revelation. But as I grieved the loss of my marriage, I knew this was just the beginning of a long journey, a journey of healing, of rediscovering myself, and, most importantly, ensuring that my son David remained unscathed in this unfortunate crossfire. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.